Welcome to this first edition of LegendNTwoGames. I'm Isaiah with my man Frank here. Frank, we got a lot on our plate for this first episode. There's been a lot going on in the sports world, particularly around basketball. More recently, a lot has been made about LeBron James and Bronny James, particularly because of where LeBron is at in this junction of his career, being in year 22. A
Mhm.
lot has been built up from being 18 years old to now. He's been able to really knock off a lot of milestones in a lot of different ways. One of them uh, has been in waiting for, I would say, about 3 to 4 years now. People have thrown into the lexicon the potential of LeBron actually playing with his son. And I would say about 2 years ago, when he was at Sierra Canyon, there was a lot built up into Bronny and how his game has been developing, or so they have, or so they were trying to paint the picture as it being.
Mhm.
And then something unfortunate happened when he went into cardiac arrest at USC,
Mhm.
and his game. I don't want to necessarily say it wasn't the same, but from that juncture on, it just never materialized the way that people foresaw it being.
Mhm.
But the vehicle of LeBron the machine still was able to navigate Bronny to the NBA despite only averaging 4 points a game at USC, despite not being a game changer on the floor in any way. He still found a way to be a Laker.
Mhm.
Cool. But there was a lot of backlash to that. What do you think about how it materialized, and what do you think about where it is today?
Um. Yeah. I think all points were well said. Right. Um. Bronny isn't didn't seem like a surefire NBA player. Right. I don't think at any point. Right. I do think at some point folks were high on well he could be a serviceable like backup point on a pro level. Right. I think saw that people saw that the injury. I mean, the injury happens. The cardiac arrest happens, which is like a life changing injury. Right. And I do think what gets missed when critiquing on a lot of Bronny's game is that a lot of time was missed, right? Like a lot of time, like maturing and getting acclimated to the college game was missed, just working to get back on the court, right? Then when he played at USC, we saw flashes a few games, but no, like you said, nothing really materialized, right? The draft comes, right? He does pretty decent in the combine, but folks know it's you going to LeBron team or no one else, right? So the Lakers draft him with the 35th pick. Now he hasn't. It's no secret he hasn't had a particularly productive NBA rookie season. He has had a really good G League showing. So I think that's promising, and I do think that his G League play I think validates that he may have been a more productive college player had it not been for the injury, right? Because I think some games he looked like the best player on court in G League, right? And in G League, yes, make of it what you want, right? G League does have some French pros. It has some folks who aren't, right? But I think the fact that he's there competing in scenes and at main times looks like a lead guard on a pro-ish level, I think bodes well for potentially how serviceable he can be potentially on a pro level. So that's how I see Bronny at this early juncture in his career. I also think the media just talks about LeBron way too much, right? And I think that transfers them to talking about Bronny more than we talk about anybody picked that late in the second round. So I think that's also like just I guess part of what comes with it. But I think that does add to the discourse in a negative way, right? Because ESPN will tell you what LeBron had for breakfast, right? It's just like that's what it is. Because of that, we speak about everything his son does, like good or bad, just gets magnified, right? And I think that has led us to kind of where we are right now, and also the big blow up between LeBron and Stephen A.
So that led into the next point. Um, Particularly with how LeBron has been covered, a lot of it has to do with the machine that is uh, media and how the sports business is built on narratives in a lot of different ways.
Sure.
For many, many years, particularly with the NBA, the foundation of its ecosystem is built on stars. That every particular era has stars, but when you get those megalomania stars that can be uh how can you say um can you be can be everywhere at one time. Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. When you get those type of vehicles, it allows for the media to
Hmm.
build and and connect different dots around who you are, your orbit. LeBron has been that for the NBA for over 20 years. And even within that, even the stars that are built up after him have been able to be interwoven into that story in a way that they can establish their own legacy with him on the at the foundation, right? So when you talk about how he's been covered, why he's been covered, and what that has trickled down to, the fact that he's been able to last as long and play at a high level, our standards may be different than others because we know when he was at his most durable, when he was at his most prolific,
Hmm.
when he was at his most impactful.
Hmm.
He's such a dominant player that he can still put up numbers and make it look as if he was LeBron in Miami, or make it look as if he was LeBron first generation Cleveland.
But we know
And
he.
we know that it's not, but he's such a skilled player. He's such a cerebral player in a lot of different ways. He can do that. So because he's such a, a monument in the game in that way, people within the media have had carte blanche to just talk about him. And Stephen A has been one of those people who, in my opinion, throughout his career, before First Take, we're talking about when he was on Fox Sports first, or even and just navigating his way as a pundit. He had a he built an equity within sports,
Hmm.
within the culture, to have a voice, and he's built it up in such a way that now, especially with the separation between him and Skip Bayless,
Hmm.
it's almost like he's the only voice that people will go to, even though he's not the only voice that you can get information from. But in terms of the mass media, he's one of the
Yeah,
first voices that you hear.
for sure.
So with this in mind, we have to paint that picture because when you talk about Bronny, everything is tied to his father, no matter
Hmm.
what he does, because of the fact that we know he's not as good as he was supposed to have been, or it was advertised to be.
At least
So
not yet.
right.
Yeah.
So when JJ Redick puts Bronny James in a game in the first quarter
Hmm.
against the Philadelphia 76ers in a January matchup,
Hmm.
and Tyrese Maxey goes right at him,
Yeah.
destroys him for multiple possessions
Hmm.
on in, it becomes what? It goes viral.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. Why is that? Because he looks like a fish out of water. He looks like the stage is too big for him,
Yeah.
which at this moment it is. He's still in development, right? Now, because of that, it's always going to tie back into the narrative of, oh, you're only here because of your father,
Hmm.
right? Now that's gonna become way bigger than, oh, a athlete just had a bad night. On any or everybody has bad nights, and they're just regular basketball players, regular NBA players that had a bad night, and boom. But because of the bullseye that's on Bronny James, it almost lends itself to the lose-lose situation of him as an individual. But then you bring in the father aspect of it and who
Yeah.
your father is, it just it just metastasized into something different.
Yeah.
But one of the things that hasn't been spoken about, at least in my opinion, or they have touched on it, but I feel like they're not holding LeBron accountable enough, is that he has played a role in why this scrutiny has become what it is. When you say your son can play in the NBA right now, when you say your son, when you say your son could be on the Lakers right now, or your son is better than half of the league right now is lightweight hilarious. You're trying to paint the picture that your son is NBA ready right now, right? So now competitors subconsciously are going to say, I can't wait to see him, right? And even if they don't outwardly say so, the audience, social media related, everything that comes with that is going to build it up in a way to say, I can't wait for Isaiah to play Bronny. I want to see what Bronny is when he's matched up against the best, right? Take me out of it. I use myself as an example. Let's say Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey is an NBA All-Star. Tyrese Maxey is a borderline All-NBA player. JJ Redick saw a game in which Bronny had what, 25 to 30 points. He performed well. He said, yo, let's bring him up. Up until that point, Bronny had only got in games in garbage time situations.
Mm-hmm.
Not even just garbage time, but certain events tied to LeBron. LeBron going back to Cleveland. Bronny grew up in Cleveland. Let's get Bronny on the court, right? The first game of the season, the Griffeys are there. Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr., father son played in the MLB together. Won a Hall of Famer, won an All-Star. Let's tie that storyline together, right? These are specific situations where Bronny's on the floor. You got a January game in the dog days of the NBA season in which Bronny James gets in the first quarter and he gets embarrassed. So JJ Redick has to get up in a press conference and say, I put him in a bad spot. I tried to bring his energy. It didn't work out. When JJ Redick has to address this, it becomes a story, right?
Yeah.
So Stephen A. Smith steps up and says, look, we know Bronny's not ready. These are the numbers. This is why. And he said something in a way that LeBron might have took offense to. But in my opinion, prior to even the face-to-face, what I'm saying is, how should Stephen A. have spoken about Bronny James? How? How could he have spoken about him in any other way other than the father angle? The only way that Bronny James is in the NBA is based on the father angle and you being LeBron. There would be no other reason for Bronny to be in the NBA other than that angle. Am I wrong there or what?
Yeah. So I see your point. Really, really good points made. I don't have an. I think like so a lot of the online discourse, right? I think there's been a conflation of like Bron being upset with like fair basketball critique and like it going outside of that. I do think I think Stephen A. is within his right as a media figure to critique a basketball player as he sees fit. I do think that that I'm begging you as a father to stop this, right? I do think that went outside the line of basketball because I would then say, well, stop what, right? Bron made his comment last year, right? That was his tweet, right? Was it the best comment? No, like probably shouldn't have. It is also a father promoting his son, right? And that's just part of it, right? So I honestly don't think LeBron. I don't know if LeBron actually meant that, right? I do believe that he thinks his son can play in the NBA. I don't believe that LeBron thinks that Bronny was better than a lot of players, right? But it is part of the promotion. They also have Bronny at 6'4", right? He's not 6'4". So I think that was all part of like the promo, right? So that's that, right? But yes, I think we can table it as LeBron shouldn't had posted that, right? He did also post that like prior to like I believe the heart.
No, it was definitely before the heart.
So so with the Maxey thing, right? When Stephen A. says I'm begging you to stop this, right? We know that Bronny is in the league because of LeBron, right? But Bron didn't say JJ, make sure my son plays big minutes today, right? Like that was JJ's decision as a coach, right? Like Bron didn't tell him to do that, right? He did that. He said, "Cool, homie, having a away game in Philly. Philly hasn't been playing particularly well. Bronny's defense has been lauded. I mean, like he plays tough on that end. Let's bring in the game. See if the youngin can give us provide a spark, right? It doesn't work out. Therese Maxey goes at him. I think 4 straight plays scores on him. Right? He he got the game. It's not like campaign scored on like scored on LeBron, right? This is the like you said, an all-star player, a guy who I think has multiple 40-point playoff games, right? So this is a guy who was cooking the Knicks guards, right? So I'm like, Therese Maxey is not a scrub, so he cooks players. Now I get there's more to it because it's Bronny, but like this is an all-star player, right? So he's gonna cook anyone, right? I think elite guards are gonna cook all young guards, right? That's just like how it is. Like you new to this, like you you don't have like this the court savvy, the awareness, the speed, the foot speed, the strength. I'm going at you, right? So that's that. But like you said, things get blown up because it's Bronny. Steve, JJ acts about it. He speaks about it. That's that. I think if Stephen A says they brought Bronny in the game, right? That kid ain't ready, right? He ain't play well. He shouldn't play. That's fine. I think when you say I'm begging you as a father to stop this, right? Well, it's like stop what at this point? Hey,
So,
go ahead.
so I think the build up to that point is it almost felt as if they were trying to force something that should not have been.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of where it had gone because, or at least it felt like that's why. Because at no point in the season had Bronny shown that he's been progressing. Now you brought up the G League and how the G League performances show he probably would have been better suited being an elite college player eventually, relative to his confidence. The more he's
Okay.
played, the more that he can get exposure to the competition, he would have performed. And I think that speaks to, like you were saying about the heart, just being able to get more basketball under you,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is outside of just being this is outside of being on the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you talk about him being drafted specifically only because of LeBron and the Lakers, it ties itself into LeBron making the decisions for Bronny being available for the Lakers on certain nights,
Mm-hmm.
Bronny getting in the game in certain situations, usually in blowout situations.
Mm-hmm.
So because of this, now you're while you're saying that's JJ's decision, yes, it could have been JJ's decision, but it's heavily influenced by LeBron, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, now when Stephen A. Smith is speaking, he's speaking to the person that heavily influences why the Lakers drafted him 55, why the Lakers are playing him in these games when he probably shouldn't be. He's speaking to LeBron, right? Now, you speak about the promotion, you speak about the machine that is LeBron, the LeBron business, not the LeBron player. That part of it, sometimes, even if it's not always the case, it seems as if it bleeds into a lot of things that don't have anything to do with basketball,
That's fair.
right?
Yeah.
So you almost have to speak to you gotta pierce through the
Mm-hmm.
LeBron athlete competitor and say, yo, LeBron, I'm speaking to you as a father, and you are right. Maybe it came off as conjecture or uh entertainment value, trying to get the clickbait, trying to get people to see the drama behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, now you're being extra.
Mm-hmm.
But at its core, the messaging is true.
Yeah.
Y'all all knew, everybody involved knew that this kid was not ready for the NBA. If the story was, yo, I just want to make sure my son is drafted and I could play with him before I leave. Yo, let's get this done the first game. And look, he's drafted now. He got a 4-year contract after being a 55th player, a 55th draft pick in the second round. 4 years guaranteed. That never happens. Right? Cool. He got the security. Now look, we got the first game done. Yo, let's send him to the G League, get him ready. Right? That's something that could have been, I would say, I don't want to say more so acceptable, but I would say it would be understood. Like, yo, This is what I wanted to happen. Now let's really develop him. He's not in college no more. He can just play ball and focus on ball. And if he's going to become an NBA player, he got to earn his way, right?
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening. He's not playing on the road with his G League team. He's playing. He's on the roster and in games or on the bench during games where he's not playing. That helping his development? No. And then all of a sudden you put him in a game in the first quarter against an all NBA caliber point guard. That's not a basketball decision.
So coaching makes mistakes all the time, right? And I think the thing is, how do you know if he's developing or not like we think he is unless we give him a chance, right? So it's like he wasn't scoring in G League initially, he wasn't scoring that much, right? Then he started getting 20s, 25s, 28. He dunking on people. It's like, oh, like he crossing over steps. Okay, cool. So he's getting better. So it's like you go
from that to throw him in the first quarter of a game.
You study, you take a test. Study, you take a test, right? He failed this test, right? But it's the first test, right? Like him playing the game was inconsequential to LA getting blown out that game, right? Like didn't blown out, right? So again, like he played bad, right? But for those 4 minutes, like what else? I don't know how else LA would have done, right, if he wasn't in the game, right?
So now you're 100% right for that one game. But now when Stephen A. Smith is talking about that one game, he can tie in all the other games, all the other moments when Bronny is getting in the game when it's inconsequential. And then all of a sudden you put him in a game where it's, I mean, in totality, it didn't affect the game, but at that moment, the game is still in the balance, and you're putting him in the game.
Yeah,
that you know what I mean. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense in that moment, and then to many, to the masses, the only reason he's in the NBA is because of his father. So when he came out as he did, you know, he put the extra sauce on it. But now when LeBron approaches him that way, you got to think about it like LeBron has the power to step to any media member as LeBron James, but he stepped to Stephen A. Smith as a father. No other father is really stepping to Stephen A. Smith for critiquing their sons like that. Del Curry not stepping to Stephen A. Smith for talking about Steph Curry. T. Morant can't step to Stephen A. Smith for talking about John Morant. Oh, without it being looked at a certain way.
Fair. I think family members have to have like had adversarial things with Stephen A. Smith before.
100%. 100%.
I remember, like, I think Kyrie's folks had them beef with him.
Kyrie pops, Kevin Durant mom.
Yeah, a few folks.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but I'm saying
they are on LeBron. I get it.
So when that happens, now you're tying in two different. It's like interwoven in a certain way to where it almost looks as if even if that's not the case for LeBron, it's gonna make it look like don't talk about my son.
Yeah.
When your son is an NBA player now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's not an amateur anymore. He's a true professional. So when D'Angelo Russell's playing bad and he's shooting bad and not performing, people gonna critique him.
Yeah.
If Bronny James get on the court and he's the clear mismatch every night, well, not every night, but every possession, you gotta point that out.
I'm just wondering if I think the reason why I don't have the biggest issue with LeBron doing that, although I would prefer it not happen during the game, right? Not happen in the game and not with cameras, right? I think talking to him, whatever, right? Because that's fine. I think there's been other moments where people have critiqued Bronny and LeBron and say nothing, right? I do think LeBron saw the red line as I'm begging you as a father. It's like the critique is fair. He's already in the NBA. He's already there, right? I think we might as well see what he has, right? Like, I hate to use this example, right? But if Giannis' brother gets cooked, right? The Stephen A. said, I'm begging you as a brother, stop doing this. He averaging 0.8 points. He never plays, right? Like he's not productive at all. How long he been on that team? Like, what does he do for the Bucks? Right? At one point, didn't Giannis have two brothers on it, if I'm not mistaken? The other one was there. What was he doing for the Bucks? Right? So it's like this. If I'm sure they've been brought in the game before and they got cooked. Like Giannis got cooked. The Stephen A. said, "I'm bringing you as I'm begging you as a brother to stop this." Right now, he clearly was a better prospect than a Bronny. He was a pro somewhere else, right? But this is a guy who's there by nepotism, right? You're there because the Bucks are beholden to Giannis, right? And a small market all-star player. So it's like I don't think we've ever heard as a brother, I'm begging you stop this. Like your brother can't play it, right? He's there, right? So I'm like, if we Chris Smith was in the NBA, right? Not long, right? But Chris Smith was then I'm saying you have players who have done less for the game, whose stature is nowhere near LeBron, who have gotten their family in before, right? And we haven't heard this before, right? Like,
So yes,
yeah,
but I believe while there's been multiple examples of nepotism, all well pointed out, particularly with Giannis, because Giannis, compared to most, is similar to LeBron in that he is MVP level, Hall of Fame level. Franchises are gonna say the red carpet is yours. What are you asking for? We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
Those particular examples be damned. I think what has happened, or what has happened with Bronny compared to those, is those other players had to prove that they were players other places. Right? So the Nasus is not good, especially not compared to his brother. But he was a G League player.
He got like a
on the Knicks
NBA game, yeah.
Right. So he's proven that he's not the best, but
Yeah.
at least he has a resume that could say, okay, he could be at the end of the bench somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was.
Yeah.
The thing about the thing that I would say with Bronny is that, okay, and this is why I would have encouraged him playing more G League. It's like, okay, you went to USC, you got to the NBA because of your father. Cool. But now you have to be separate from your father in a way to say, I am a basketball player. And if I got to earn my way up as a basketball player, eventually I'm going to be able to be on the edge of the bench somewhere and they're going to say, yo, you got to be in the NBA because of your father. But I still was able to build my foundation as a player. Because of the situation at USC, he barely played.
Yeah.
He barely played. He went but before the cardiac arrest, he went into USC as one of their premier recruits. He was still I would say behind two guards or so, but he was he would have been a rotation key player that could have really made bones as a performer.
Mm-hmm.
But at USC, he played less than 30 minutes a game. He played a little over 20, averaged 4 points a game, and was really trying to find himself.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm in the NBA with my pops in the biggest in one of the top markets on a marquee franchise, and now I'm being scrutinized for things that I can't control.
Yeah.
You dig what I'm saying? That's not fair to him, and I think a lot of it. I think a lot of it was placed on the fact that he was caught up in his whirlwind with his father.
That's fair.
The thing I want to tie into for our next point is more so the media.
Yeah.
In terms of the coverage and how it's been covered, a lot of it has to do with social media.
For sure.
Things going viral, clickbait. And especially when you think about why and where and who, why, when, where and how things have materialized, I would say over the last 15 years or so.
Yeah.
Hot take debate shows have really tainted a lot of the foundation of what the media medium really was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, and your vantage point about how, particularly LeBron, in the eye of the storm of all of this,
Mm-hmm.
has really influenced what it became?
Yeah. I think life has become a giant engagement farm game, right? With everything, right? And unfortunately, like sports and basketball has been part of that, right? Like I say this, I say this hot take, I post it, and then people want to see it and run to it, right? And I think that's became the norm, right? Like sometimes it really seems, sometimes it looks like it seems as if folks are looking for the right moment, right? I don't think they always are. I think a lot of folks believe what they're saying. Sometimes it just seems like folks want to hit, right? Like what's going on here, right? So I think we've gotten away from like really needed analysis of basketball, right? That I think we talk about all the time that is lacking amongst like pundits and fans, whether it be like perceived diehard fans and casuals, right? I think like analyzing the understanding game is lacking, and I think a lot of that is on the onus of the media, like spending a lot of time with hot takes, right? So my narratives and storyline, as opposed to like discussing basketball. And I think I'm just getting out of hand, right? So I think you and I spoke this week about Shaquille O'Neal, right? Like, I don't know. I was gonna ask them. I mean, I remember you guys talk about Chris Webber, right? Like, I mean, really great basketball player, right? Knows basketball, but sometimes I'm not sure if the best things come out, right? No respect to Chris Webber. But with Shaq, I think he takes the cake, right? It's like, bro, like one, I don't know if you're understanding things, right? I mean, are you watching? And that's why I think we have to move away from the he played so like he knows the sport, right? Like playing in the NBA means that you are really good at basketball, right? Like doesn't mean that you're probably the best at like discussing it, analyzing it. Like, but I think it's this conflation of the people are experts because they played, and I think like
So
we move from that. Go ahead.
I think, particularly when we speak about inside the NBA,
Mm-hmm.
again, no disrespect to that platform and the amount of years they've put in entertaining us,
Mm-hmm.
presenting us with something outside of sport that has allowed them to grow and really bring in audiences that don't necessarily love basketball, but they just want to they want to have fun. That show allows for that space, right? But I think, to your point, you got to think about how the analysts, especially the sports analysts, uh, the 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 platform that the athlete brought. They brought what? Authenticity, validity to their words, right? And when they spoke, it's like, okay, if Bill Russell was the color commentator,
Mm-hmm.
it has to mean something. He won 11 championships, right? He coached 2 of those championships while playing. So when he speaks, you believe it, right? But I think what has to be established is that those guys, as they built up their name outside of actually playing but becoming an analyst, they took it serious.
Yeah.
They took the responsibility as an analyst serious because they didn't want to just be looked at as a dumb jock. They
Yeah.
want to show their ability to articulate and show their intelligence outside of just the physical,
Yeah.
right? I think sometimes, and I don't want to say it's for all of them, but particularly in the last situation with Shaquille, if those that are not aware, they just had an episode on Inside the NBA. He was very dismissive about Zion Williamson's triple double.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, he didn't want to give him credit because of the 20 points. He thought it was beneath the idea of the triple double that we would give him credit for the 20. Then when they were speaking about the Detroit, then when they were speaking about the Detroit Pistons, he didn't want to give them credit, called them boring, and didn't want to respect Bickerstaff as the coach,
The coach wrong.
and thought he was Chauncey Billups. I think a lot of that is not necessarily not knowing the game. I think that's just being dismissive and not paying attention and taking it serious,
He don't watch.
right? So,
Watch it. Yeah.
so I think that's a unique situation in a
Mm-hmm.
one-on-one compared to those like we would talk about like a Grant Hill.
Yeah.
Grant Hill is someone who is also a Hall of Famer. Grant Hill
Hmm.
is someone who has performed at a high level. He's been through all the stages of the athlete, the superstar level, the role player, the injured player,
Yeah.
bounce back, all these different things. He's in the front office of teams. He's well spoken. All these different things that Shaq is also.
Hmm.
Shaq is also a smart person, a shrewd businessman,
Hmm.
a great basketball player, a Hall of Fame player, a great personality. All those different components tied into one person. That's why he's on TV.
Hmm.
But there are times and spaces where, particularly him and Charles, while they are entertaining to others, don't necessarily show the seriousness
No.
for their role.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Kenny comes in. Kenny comes in and balances them out. But I think to your point about the power of the voices, the power of the names, there's a reason why when they bring in the star, they say Shaquille O'Neal, 4-time NBA champion,
Mhm.
MVP, 3-time Finals MVP. Those accolades,
Adds gravity. Yep.
right? So
Mhm.
when you speak, even if those that know ball be like, yo, he just playing around. Don't take him serious right now.
Yeah.
The fact that he says it, it will pierce through a lot faster and be
Mhm.
a lot more powerful. So I
Mhm.
think that too tied into, let's go back a little bit, why LeBron addressed Stephen A the way that he did, because he knows the magnitude of
Yeah.
what Stephen A is saying and where it's coming from.
Yeah.
It's on First Take. They got high ratings every
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
It's not only going to be seen every day in different time slots on TV, but it's going to go all over the place on the internet, right? And when you talk about the engagement culture, when Shaq says what he says and the way that he says it, it's not only it's not only on TV at 1 o'clock on a Thursday or a Tuesday when it come on. It's first thing in the morning. The memes
It's on repeat. It's on loop.
nonstop, and it's hard to walk that back,
Nope.
right? So that part of it, when you speak about the coverage and how we are looking at sports media now, that fourth wall that was there, where it's like we had to go and search for articles and
Hmm.
look up things and get quotes and put the name to the quote, figure out the context and what it was said. It's a lot more visual, it's a lot more video now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is good, but it's also bad.
Legit. Legit.
You know what I mean? Because there's no there's no filtering out whether somebody there's no filtering right from wrong at the time. It's just out there, and depending on how the audience receives it, it will determine the influence at that time.
For sure. I want to say more or less, right? All the players have always had critique of the current game, right?
Right.
Larry Bird had critique of the 90s, right? Folks talk about the 90s like the golden years. Larry Bird thought the 90s was watered down due to expansion and everything, right? So that was the thing. Like these are documented things. Like you can search the interview with Larry Bird saying that, right? But I think we're at a place where again, like you said, the media apparatus is just so large and so constant and so omnipresent, right? That you're getting all these things at one time, and sometimes it feels like a dog pile, right?
Right.
Or like a power lawn, right? So when we talk about the coverage of the game and the game's not being as good, right? The game not being as exciting, right? Players shoots too many threes, everyone plays the same, right? I think there's some credence there, right? But I do think that folks are allowing narratives to run, right, without being critical and analytical as they should, right? The Thunder and the Celtics, as we know, don't play alike, right? And the Knicks and the Cavs don't play like either, right? Detroit is a tough nosed physical team that likes to run, right? They play really well and they have really solid young players, right? So I think some of these notions about lack of variety and lack of excitement, I think, are overblown, right?
Right. And I think a lot of that comes with the fact that they're only providing real coverage to
Yeah,
specific teams.
yep,
rather than the whole ecosystem that is the NBA,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you are, I always speak about the NFL in this way. You can't really cover the NFL narrative based
Nope.
because one year the Jacksonville Jaguars are really bad, and then
Mm-hmm.
the next year they're very good.
Yeah.
And you have to cover them in a way to where you have to acknowledge their presence because their games are so there's such a finite outcome with a lot of football games that for 17 games this season matters, and then boom, the playoffs are here.
Yeah.
There's one team out of nowhere could win 12 games and make a quick run to or AFC championship game like the Washington Commanders.
Yeah.
And it's like this happened out of nowhere. We got to be serious about how we cover them,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Compared to the NBA where you could sleepwalk for 4 or 5 months and then get serious in March and April.
Start watching. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you're gonna see the same teams there. You're gonna see the same players there.
Uh-huh.
So the narrative of Luka Doncic, Jokic, Giannis, LeBron, these are the same names you hear all the time.
Yeah.
Stephen Curry, right? There's never gonna I don't want to say never, but there's rarely gonna be new faces that overshadow the constant, right? So you can talk about LeBron as if it is 2018 Cleveland without really missing too much because he's still LeBron.
You can be lazy. Yeah, you be lazy, right?
You can be lazy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that ties into how it is critiqued, but also, and we speak about this in a lot of different ways, not just with sports, but in life as well. It's like you have to adjust with how you're looking at how the game is being digested also. When you speak about ratings and you speak about people looking at where the game is going, nobody's, I don't want to say nobody, but people are finding different ways to look at the game. They're not just looking at the game on TV anymore. They're looking at the game on Twitter, on Instagram, right? Facebook, all these different mediums, right? In a 30-second clip, right? When you talk about ratings and they talk about the ratings is down, the ratings are down because people are doing multiple things at one time.
Legit.
I could watch basketball on my phone and watch a show on Netflix at the same time.
Legit.
Right? Yep. I could literally follow the game without actually watching the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could look at your tweets, see what's going on. You might post a video. I might have missed your video, but I find it somewhere else. You post another video. Now I'm piecing the game together without watching it.
League Pass shows replays like endlessly, right, at a certain time. So I don't gotta catch it at 8 o'clock, right? Maybe I can work. I'm tired. I'm in the crib. I'm sleeping. When I wake up at 6 a.m. going to work, I'll watch it, right? So it's a different landscape, right? I think the coverage being down is also over the narrative that I think also gets overblown.
But people though, because it's like that, because it's so, I don't want to say choppy, but because it's pieced together in certain different ways, now the analysts on these big platforms can be lazy in that way.
Yep.
Right? They can go stretches where they're not watching the game, but they'll get caught up on this week's news through a couple of scrolls. What happened here?
Yeah.
You might not even see the full interview, but you might see a clip, and you can build the whole show based off a 30-second clip.
Yeah. I wonder how the producers at these shows, like, because back in the day, I think you have to sit and recognize and decide what will be the most important today or with the headline. I think you can see what's getting the most engagements and somebody there, right? Like what happened, what had the most views, the most likes and stuff. And I think that can dictate what you speak about, right? And perhaps that's a successful and productive business model, right? But I do think it does leave way to you missing things, right? Or like I said, you getting lazy, right? Because like I think the algorithm does it for you, right? And the algorithm tells you what's important, right? It tells you what folks want to see, right? And I think you become like a confirmation bias, right? It's like you folks want to see this, so I'll show you this, right? As opposed to something that may actually like be deserving of our attention that we're not covering because it's not as exciting or it's not as popular, right? So I think there's just a lot to think about when in regards to the way we receive and watch basketball and media coverage of basketball.
So
Yeah.
when you think about that, and you spoke about with Larry Bird,
Hmm.
uh, and his critique at the time of of where the game was going due to expansion.
Yeah.
Obviously, anything that's fresh and new that kind of goes against the old traditions or the norm will be criticized to a certain degree. Um, Now, with the advantageous nature of analytics and taking threes, it definitely has adjusted and changed how the game is played in totality. Oftentimes, we might see teams that are taking threes that don't necessarily have the requisite skill players to take as many threes as they're taking, but because of the nature of the game, you got to kind of adjust with the time.
Yeah.
That's changing stats, it's changing numbers. Um, when we speak about errors,
Yeah.
how do you think how do you think it will be adjusted over time? Obviously, there's going to be a disconnect, but when you think about where the errors are, like I saw a graphic the other day that spoke about uh, the boomers, the millennials, the Gen Z errors,
All right. Yeah.
and every era is going to believe that their era is the best.
Yeah.
Where do you think the common ground is to where each era is getting their just due in terms of what and how the game has been played and where it's going?
I think that people who have watched basketball for a long time and understand nuance have to be extremely vocal and have to be looked towards as like leaders and expertise, right? Because I think if you allow folks who maybe like loyal or biased to one era, I think things get lost, right? Like today I saw a graphic about Tatum's number this year compared to LeBron's numbers in 2013, right? And like Tatum numbers look better, right? But people don't understand the pace is higher, teams get more possessions, the offensive rating is higher, the point per game is higher, right? So there's context that if the right person isn't there doing that combo, right, gets lost, right? And people like no shade to him, but somebody may look at Trey Young's numbers, right, and it may kill Jason Kidd's numbers from the past, right? Or see that number, right? And somebody who don't know may assume that okay, well, this the guy did this, like he's better, right? So I think it really takes folks who understand, right, who have watched for a long time and appreciate the differences between the eras, but can also speak to it to kind of help continue to break things down, right? Because a lot I think will get lost, especially in the age of numbers being plastered on memes and short graphics, right? I think our in the age where information and knowledge is more readily available, I think also our capacity and our attention spans have shortened, right? So I think we receive things, we learn things, but we don't go back and do the required work to understand the nuance of it, right? We take things as it is, right? And I think the advantage of having so much knowledge that you can go sift through things in a more seamless way than you can in the past. But I think that because we have so much at our fingertips, we allow and we receive things as is, right? And I think that that could be dangerous, right? It can be troubling, um, to say the least.
When you if you think about where the game is right now, you speak about the likes of the Shea, uh, Gilgis Alexander's, even the Luka Doncic now, being on the Lakers at 25, he has his whole future ahead of him.
Yeah.
One of the pillars of the NBA.
Mhm.
We speak about the future of the game and how the potential players like Luka and Shea have decades ahead where they can perform and put numbers up. How would you gauge what they're going to do versus what has been done? How are you going to, in your mind at least, say, okay, this player had about a 6 year run where they were putting up 28, 29 points a game,
Yeah.
but the way that they score is a lot different
Yeah.
than the way uh Kobe Bryant, LeBron, AI
Yeah.
scored, and I love using LeBron in this way because he's the chameleon that was in a lot of different eras.
Mm-hmm.
So you could put up a graphic of LeBron right now, and his numbers, the raw numbers, might look very similar to LeBron in say early Cleveland.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, well, the numbers are better now. The efficiency is better now. He's shooting better now.
Ain't the
But
same.
it's a totally different LeBron,
Yeah.
right? So,
The same.
when you look at what it is now, where it's going, how do you think you can gauge how the numbers are gonna look?
I think barring injury, players who've played in the last 10 or so years, numbers will look a little more ridiculous than in the past, right? So I think we have to be when players pass certain players on all-time lists, I think we have to like, of course, I think you give everyone their credit in the time, right? Because this shows your dominance relative to who you're playing, right? But also keep in mind that when somebody averages 33 points now, it's amazing because they're like a league leader, but also they're averaging 8, 9 threes, right? At the time where folk didn't shoot that much in the past. So I think you can do both, right? You can credit what somebody's doing now because regardless of what this to the only person doing it, right? But also acknowledge that, well, in '05, and Kobe won the scoring title, he wasn't shooting 10 threes a game, right? He was taking 28 shots per game, right? Which we can also like look at and dissect the way we should, right? But just point to nuances, right? So I think I think if you stay true to your understanding of the game, and give things its proper context, I think you'll be fine in how you assess things, right? Just making sure that folks have that check, right? That this is amazing, right? But also it deserves its context, right? And I think these young players are going to like run through some of these books, right? I think barring injury, like if you can play 10 or 15 or so years, right? Players will hit the 2K statute that we speak about all the time, right? Per season, fairly easy, right? Playing 70 or so, playing 70 and 75 games, right? Players will hit that on a regular, right? Because the game is fast, right? There's freedom of movement, right? The threes are shot at a high rate. The average point per game is higher. Resistance isn't quite the same, right? I don't want to say defense is going, right? Because I think that's also overblown, right? But I do think defense is different now, right? I think holding somebody to a certain point hold looks different in today's age, right? And I think sometimes your best defense is your offense, right? In comparison to the past. So that's different, right? So yeah.
Checks and balances.
Yeah,
Checks and balances. I think
for sure.
that's a good cap on today's episode,
Yeah.
considering what we covered. Checks and balances in the media, checks and balances with historical
Yeah.
context to the game, and checks and balances with LeBron and Stephen A. in regards to Bronny James.
Uh-huh.
So for this is our first one. We're going to definitely chop up some more.
Definitely.
We'll be back with you next week with some more to cover, especially when we think about the potential NCAA tournaments. Obviously, Selection Sunday coming up on the women's side, and
Yeah.
then we have Selection Sunday for the men as well. Right now, they're in conference play with a lot of good games there. Then we got the NBA playoffs coming up as well. So we got a lot to cover here. So
Sure.
we'll definitely be in tune. I'm Isaiah Rose. I'm here with Frank Tier. This is a Legend in Two Games. We're going to tap in with more. Thank you for watching.
I love it.